I'm Allison Mitchell, 34 years old, and I discovered my only brother got married through Instagram. There he was, James, beaming beside his bride Diana in a sunset ceremony while I sat in my apartment, completely blindsided. The wedding I never knew about happened last weekend. When I called James demanding answers, his response cut deeper than any knife. "My wife doesn't want you there." Those 6 words shattered our lifelong bond. What followed was a journey through the darkest betrayal I've ever experienced and the unexpected path I took to save us both. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt the sting of family betrayal. Trust me, what happened next will show you why blood ties sometimes need to be fought for even when they're broken. James and I grew up as the classic inseparable siblings despite our 3-year age gap. Our small house in suburban Michigan meant shared spaces and shared secrets. He was the protective older brother who taught me to ride a bike, helped with math homework, and once punched Tommy Brenner in the nose for stealing my lunch in 4th grade. "Nobody messes with my little sister," he'd say, throwing his arm around my shoulders as we walked home from school. It was our unspoken pact we had each other's backs, always. Our bond crystallized when Dad died suddenly of a heart attack. I was 16, James 19, and just starting college. I still remember him abandoning his dorm room to come home that terrible weekend, holding my hand during the funeral while I couldn't stop crying. "We've got each other, Allie," he whispered. "We'll always have each other." After Dad's death, Mom fell into a depression that lasted nearly 2 years. James delayed his education to work part-time, while I finished high school. We became each other's support system, tag-teaming to keep the household running. I'd cook dinner after school while he worked evening shifts at the hardware store. On weekends, we'd take turns making sure Mom ate and took her medication. When James finally returned to college, we talked almost every night. The physical distance did nothing to our emotional connection. I followed him to the same university 2 years later, and our Sunday brunches became sacred tradition. Through his accounting degree and my nursing studies, we remained constants in each other's lives. I was there when Melissa, his college girlfriend of 3 years, blindsided him with a breakup right before graduation. I helped pack her things while he sat shell-shocked on the couch. That night, we ate ice cream straight from the carton and watched terrible action movies until sunrise. Just as I supported him through heartbreak, he celebrated every success in my life. When I struggled to pass my nursing boards, he created color-coded study guides and quizzed me for weeks. When I finally passed, he organized a surprise party with all our friends. His early career struggles became mine too. 3 accounting firms rejected him before he landed his first position. I proofread every cover letter, rehearsed interview questions, and waited by the phone for news. When he finally got hired, I was the first person he called. "I couldn't have done this without you, Allie," he said, voice cracking with emotion. Then Diana entered the picture 3 years ago. James met her at a colleague's wedding. She was the wedding planner. Their courtship was whirlwind fast. Within 3 months, Shed practically moved into his apartment. The first time we met for dinner, I noticed something off in her smile when James introduced us. It didn't reach her eyes. Throughout the meal, she directed all conversation toward James, speaking about me in the third person even though I sat directly across from her. "James tells me his sister is a nurse," she said, cutting her chicken into precise squares. "That must be so difficult with the long hours and, well, all the unpleasant aspects." I tried to connect with her, genuinely. I asked about her wedding planning business, her family, her hobbies. Her answers were polite but clipped, always turning the conversation back to herself and James as a unit. "James and I are thinking of redecorating his place," Shed say, reaching for his hand. "James and I might vacation in Bermuda this winter." James had always called me weekly, but those calls gradually decreased. Our Sunday brunches became monthly, then quarterly. When I did see him, Diana was always there, her arm looped possessively through his. I made countless efforts to bond with Diana. I invited her for girls' lunches, declined, sent thoughtful birthday gifts, barely acknowledged, and offered to help with her business connections, ignored. Each rejection came with a plausible excuse: she was busy with a client, feeling under the weather, already had plans. The change in James was subtle but unmistakable. My brother, once warm and expressive, grew more reserved around me. His laugh became less frequent, his stories more carefully edited. Sometimes I'd catch him glancing at Diana before answering my questions, as if seeking approval. "You just need to give her time," James insisted when I gently raised concerns. Diana's particular about who she lets in. She's had trust issues from past relationships. I backed off, respecting his request. But in retrospect, those early warning signs were flashing red lights I chose to ignore for my brother's sake. The distance growing between us wasn't natural drift, it was engineered separation, and I was losing my brother one cancelled plan at a time. The engagement announcement came via group text, not even a personal call. James and Diana had been together just under a year. I was hurt by the impersonal notification but called immediately to congratulate them, genuinely excited for my brother's happiness. We're having an engagement celebration at Diana's parents' place next Saturday, James mentioned, almost as an afterthought. You should come. The invitation arrived by email 3 days before the event, clearly not part of the original guest list. Still, I was determined to support James and make another effort with Diana. I bought a new dress, a thoughtful gift, and prepared myself mentally to be warm and engaging despite past rejections. Diana's family estate was imposing, a sprawling colonial on 5 manicured acres in the wealthiest suburb of our city. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway as a valet took my keys, barely concealing his smirk at my modest sedan among the Mercedes and BMWs. Inside, crystal chandeliers illuminated rooms filled with designer furniture. Servers circulated with champagne and canapes while a string quartet played in the corner. Diana floated through the crowd in a designer gown that probably cost more than 3 months of my nursing salary. "Oh, Allison, you made it," Diana said when she spotted me, her surprise poorly concealed. "James mentioned you might come." No hug, no warmth, just a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. The wealth disparity was impossible to ignore. Diana's father, I learned, owned a chain of luxury hotels. Her mother, draped in diamonds, evaluated me from across the room like I was a slightly defective purchase she was considering returning. "So you're the nurse," Diana's mother said when we were finally introduced, emphasizing my profession as if it were a curious hobby. "How rewarding that must be for you." "It is, Mrs. Carter. I love helping people," I replied, maintaining eye contact and dignity. She tilted her head. "Diana mentioned you and James had a rather humble upbringing. We had everything that mattered," I said, thinking of our tight-knit family before Dad died. "Love doesn't require square footage." She smiled thinly and excused herself. I retreated to the bar, feeling increasingly out of place. While waiting for a drink, I overheard Diana speaking to 2 elegantly dressed women just around the corner. James insisted she be invited. Diana's voice carried, family obligation and all that. I told him she wouldn't fit in here, but he can be so sentimental about his sister. Thankfully, she hardly knows anyone, so I won't have to introduce her around much. My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I stayed, determined to be there for James. The evening reached its lowest point when Diana, glass of red wine in hand, approached me while I was speaking with one of James' colleagues. "I love your dress," she said, voice dripping with false sweetness. "So brave to wear something so bright." Before I could respond, she gasped dramatically as wine splashed across my chest, staining the pale blue fabric an ugly purple. "Oh my goodness, I'm so clumsy," Diana exclaimed, hand covering her mouth in theatrical shock. The movement seemed practiced, deliberate. "It's okay," I said automatically, though it wasn't. The dress had cost nearly half my weekly paycheck. James hurried over, but instead of checking if I was all right, he laughed and handed Diana a napkin. "Careful, babe, you almost got it on your dress too." "I'm so sorry," Diana said, dabbing ineffectually at my ruined outfit while whispering. "You should probably clean up in the bathroom." Down the hall, second door. As I retreated, cheeks burning, I heard laughter behind me. When I glanced back, Diana was whispering something to James that made him chuckle while looking in my direction. In the bathroom, I fought back tears while trying to salvage my dress. A gentle knock on the door revealed a woman about my age, with Diana's high cheekbones but softer eyes. "I'm Rebecca, Diana's cousin," she said, offering me a stain removal pen. I saw what happened. "That wasn't an accident. You noticed that too?" I asked, relief flooding through me at having someone validate what I'd felt. "Diana doesn't do accidents," Rebecca said, helping me dab at the stain. "I've known her all my life. Nothing she does is unintentional." We chatted while cleaning my dress. Rebecca seemed different from the other guests, warmer, more genuine. She shared stories about growing up with Diana, subtly revealing a pattern of manipulative behavior without explicitly criticizing her cousin. When I returned to the party, James was preparing to give a speech. I stood at the back, still damp but composed, as my brother thanked Diana's parents for hosting, praised Diana's perfection, and expressed gratitude to their friends for attending. He thanked Diana's family individually by name, mentioning inside jokes and shared memories. Not once did he acknowledge me. His only sister Hode stood by him through everything. I might as well have been a stranger. As glasses clinked and guests applauded, I slipped out the front door, called a rideshare, and left without saying goodbye. My phone buzzed with a text from James nearly 3 hours later. "Where'd you go? Diana thought you might have been upset about the wine." I didn't respond. The damage wasn't to my dress, it was to my heart. The weeks following the engagement party brought a new dynamic to our family gatherings. Mom had finally emerged from her years of depression and insisted on hosting monthly family dinners, a tradition Dad would have loved. During these meals, Diana dominated every conversation, positioning herself as the authority on Jameis' life, preferences, and opinions. James absolutely hates seafood, Diana declared confidently at one dinner, as Mom served her famous crab cakes, Jameis' favorite since childhood. "Actually, James began. Sweetie, remember your allergic reaction last year?" Diana interrupted, placing her hand over his. There had never been an allergy in his 37 years. James paused, confusion crossing his face before acquiescing. "Right, of course." Diana redirected every conversation to wedding plans, her career successes, or subtle criticisms disguised as concern. "Allison, you look so tired, poor thing," she'd say, reaching across to pat my hand. "Nursing must be so draining. Is that why you're still single?" No time to date. If I shared any achievement or happy news, Diana would quickly interject with something bigger from her own life. My promotion to charge nurse was overshadowed by her signing a celebrity client. My new apartment was diminished by their house hunting for mansions. After one particularly tense dinner where Diana suggested I was jealous of their relationship, I tried reaching out to James directly. Our traditional monthly movie nights, a sibling tradition since college, seemed the perfect opportunity to reconnect. "Sorry, Allie," James texted. Diana's planned a couples massage that night. The following month brought another excuse, then another. Our 15-year tradition quietly disappeared. The distance between us grew when I discovered Diana had been reading my private messages to James. It texted him about a personal health concern, asking for his support during an upcoming medical test. At the next family dinner, Diana made a pointed comment about women who overreact to minor health issues for attention. The specific details she referenced could only have come from my private message. When I confronted James after dinner, his response left me cold. "You're being paranoid, Allie," he said, shaking his head. "Diana would never go through my phone. She's just very perceptive about people." "James, she quoted almost exactly what I wrote to you." I insisted. "No one is that perceptive." "Maybe you mentioned it and forgot," he suggested. "Or maybe you're just looking for problems because you've never given Diana a fair chance." The gaslighting continued at Christmas, normally our most cherished family holiday. It brought the ornaments Dad had given us each year of our childhood, hoping to share those memories. As we decorated Mom's tree, Diana reached for the delicate glass angel Dad had given me the year he died. "This is lovely," she said, holding it carelessly by its fragile wing. "Be careful with that one," I cautioned. "It's irreplaceable." She smiled, then somehow in a movement too deliberate to be accidental let it slip from her fingers. The shattering sound silenced the room. James rushed to comfort Diana, who produced immediate tears. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed into James' shoulder. "I didn't mean to." Allison made me nervous the way she watched me. Somehow, I became the villain for making Diana uncomfortable. My grief over the broken ornament was labeled materialism and overreaction. Diana's isolation tactics extended beyond me. James' college friends stopped receiving return calls. His coworkers were no longer welcome at their home. Even our mother was subjected to Diana's subtle manipulations, with Diana often scheduling competing events when Mom suggested family gatherings. "Diana feels like you don't support their relationship," Mom told me one afternoon over coffee. "Maybe if you tried harder to get along, things would improve with James." "I've tried everything, Mom," I said, frustration building. "She doesn't want me in his life. Marriage changes priorities," Mom sighed. "Sometimes we need to accept that and give them space. Your brother's happy, isn't that what matters? But was he?" The James I glimpsed at family gatherings seemed muted, constantly checking Diana's reactions before speaking. His natural humor and warmth appeared only in brief moments when Diana stepped away. My concerns found validation during a phone call with Rebecca, Diana's cousin, who'd kept in touch since the engagement party. "Diana's always been like this," Rebecca confided. She isolated her high school boyfriend from his entire basketball team. In college, her roommate transferred schools after Diana convinced everyone the girl was stealing. "Why doesn't anyone confront her?" I asked. "Her parents enable it," Rebecca explained. "They clean up her messes and reward her manipulation with money and praise. Anyone who challenges her becomes the enemy." "Has James noticed anything?" "Men in Diana's life never notice until it's too late," Rebecca said softly. "By then, she's all they have left." The warning sent chills through me, but I felt powerless to intervene without pushing James further away. I didn't realize then that the wedding exclusion would be my breaking point, and the beginning of my fight to save my brother. I always assumed I'd stand beside James on his wedding day. Throughout our lives, Wed promised to be there for each other's major milestones. When we were teenagers, Wed even joked about our future wedding speeches, practicing embarrassing stories Wed share about each other. So when 6 months of engagement passed without any mention of wedding party invitations, I grew concerned but not alarmed. Perhaps they were taking their time planning, I reasoned. Maybe the wedding was still far off. Then came Melissa's call. Melissa Jamis, old college girlfriend who had remained a casual friend, phoned to ask about my bridesmaid dress. "What bridesmaid dress?" I asked, confusion evident in my voice. "For Jamis' wedding," she replied. "Aren't you in the wedding party?" My stomach dropped. "When is the wedding?" An awkward silence followed. "Next month," she finally said. "June 12th. I assumed you knew." After Melissa's reluctant revelation that Shed received a save-the-date months ago, I called James directly. The conversation remains seared in my memory, every word a fresh cut. "Why didn't you tell me about the wedding date?" I asked when he answered. His sigh carried through the phone. "I've been meaning to talk to you about that." "Talk to me about what, exactly?" My voice trembled despite my efforts to remain calm. "Look, Allie, this is difficult," he began, his tone oddly detached. "Diana and I have been discussing the guest list, and, well, Diana doesn't want you at the wedding." The words hit like a physical blow. "Excuse me." "Diana doesn't want you there," he repeated, more firmly this time. "It's her day, and I have to respect her wishes." "Her day," I echoed. "James, it's your wedding too. I'm your only sister. We've been through everything together. That's not fair, Allie. You never gave Diana a chance. You've been cold to her from the beginning." His accusation stunned me into momentary silence. Had Diana so thoroughly revised our history in his mind? "I've tried with Diana for 3 years," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I've reached out, made efforts, tolerated her passive-aggressive comments. How can you say I haven't tried?" "This is exactly what I'm talking about," James snapped. "You're always criticizing her. This is why Diana doesn't want you there. You just make her uncomfortable on our special day." "James, please," I pleaded, abandoning pride as desperation took over. "We promised we'd always be there for each other." "Dad would have wanted Don't bring Dad into this," he interrupted, voice sharp. "You don't get to use him to manipulate me." Tears streamed down my face. "I'm not manipulating you. I'm reminding you of our family bond. Please don't do this." His voice softened slightly, but the words were no less devastating. "I'm sorry, Allie, but my decision is final. Diana is going to be my wife, and her happiness comes first now. Before your only sister? Before our entire history. You just never gave Diana a chance," he repeated, as if reciting a mantra. "This is your fault." The call ended shortly after, leaving me shattered. I curled into a ball on my couch, sobbing until my throat was raw and my eyes swollen. The brother who had once punched a boy for stealing my lunch had now excised me from the most important day of his life. The following days brought fresh wounds. Through social media, I discovered the lavish wedding plans. Diana had created a wedding hashtag where guests shared photos of shower gifts, bachelor party preparations, and venue glimpses. Every aunt, uncle, and distant cousin appeared in these photos. Even my mother, the woman who had relied on James and me equally during her darkest days, was photographed at Diana's bridal shower, smiling beside the woman who had orchestrated my exclusion. The betrayal deepened when I learned through mutual friends that Diana had been spreading rumors about me. According to Diana, I had tried to break them up multiple times, had spoken badly about her to Jameis' friends, and was excluded from the wedding because of my unstable behavior. None of this was true, but the narrative had taken hold. Friends who had known me for years now looked at me with doubt, wondering if Diana's version held some truth. The final blow came when my mother called to discuss the wedding. "I wish things were different," she said tentatively. "You're still going?" I asked, disbelief coloring my voice. "Has my son, Allison. And I'm your daughter," I countered. "Doesn't my pain matter? Of course it does." She sighed. "But what can I do? If I refuse to attend, I'll lose James too. So instead, you're showing him it's okay to cut me out." "I'm not taking sides," she insisted. But she was. Everyone was. The weeks before the wedding marked my lowest point. I called in sick to work multiple days, unable to face colleagues who knew about my exclusion. I stopped checking social media to avoid wedding updates. I screened calls, responding only to work-related messages. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. The brother who had been my constant, my protector, my friend, my support system, had chosen a woman who openly despised me. Worse, he now believed I deserved this treatment. As the wedding date approached, I prepared myself for the pain of seeing photos, of imagining the celebration continuing perfectly without me. I never expected the lifeline that would appear just days before the ceremony, or how it would change everything. 3 days before the wedding, my doorbell rang. I'd been avoiding virtually all human contact, so I almost didn't answer. Through the peephole, I spotted Rebecca, Diana's cousin, shifting nervously on my welcome mat. I opened the door cautiously. "Rebecca." She glanced over her shoulder before asking, "Can I come in? I need to talk to you about James and Diana." In my living room, Rebecca pulled out her phone, displaying photos from the rehearsal dinner the previous evening. "I thought you should see these, at least," she said softly. I stared at images of my brother in a tailored suit, surrounded by family, my family. Mom, our aunts and uncles, cousins I'd grown up with, all smiling, celebrating without me. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, pain lancing through my chest. "Because you deserve to know what's really happening," Rebecca said, setting her phone down. "Diana's been lying to everyone, especially James." Rebecca revealed she'd been uncomfortable with Diana's behavior for years, but had stayed silent to keep family peace. The wedding preparations had pushed her ethical boundaries too far. "Diana told everyone you refused to attend because you couldn't stand seeing James happy," Rebecca explained. "She showed James fake text messages where you supposedly said horrible things about their relationship." "Fake texts? That's impossible." Rebecca shook her head. "Not for Diana. She's done it before. In college, she created fake emails to break up her roommate's relationship. She's frighteningly good with technology." More revelations followed. The gift and heartfelt card I'd sent despite my exclusion, Diana had intercepted and destroyed them, telling James I hadn't bothered to acknowledge their wedding. "She's isolated him from almost everyone," Rebecca continued. "His college friends were uninvited because Diana claimed they made inappropriate comments about her. His work friends suddenly stopped receiving return calls because Diana would delete their messages before James saw them." Rebecca pulled out a small notebook filled with dates and observations, a meticulous record of Diana's manipulations she'd been keeping for months. "Why document all this?" I asked. "Because I watched her do this before," Rebecca admitted. "Her first husband," I interrupted. "James said Diana's never been married." Rebecca's expression confirmed my shock. "She was married for 11 months when she was 23. Todd Harrison. He was a financial analyst she met through her father's business. Diana systematically cut him off from everyone he cared about. By the time they divorced, he had no support system left." The parallels to James' situation sent chills down my spine. "Does James know?" "Diana's hidden it completely. Her parents helped her legally change back to her maiden name and remove all traces of the marriage. They even moved to a different social circle afterward." Rebecca reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. "I've collected evidence, text messages, emails, social media posts. Diana has made disparaging you to mutual friends. There's also information about her previous marriage, and a pattern of this behavior with past boyfriends." "Why help me?" I asked. "She's your family." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "Because Diana needs help, not enablers. And because I see what she's doing to James, the same thing she did to Todd." He was vibrant and outgoing when they met. By the end, he was a shell of himself, isolated and dependent on her for every social connection. She described Diana's jealousy of my bond with James, how Shed mentioned it repeatedly in family gatherings I wasn't invited to. She sees you as the biggest threat because you share history with James that she can never be part of. She's been methodically poisoning his perception of you since they met. We spent hours reviewing the evidence Rebecca had gathered, messages where Diana spoke venomously about me to friends, social media posts time-stamped during events where she claimed Id behaved inappropriately, events I hadn't even attended, financial records showing Diana had accessed James' inheritance from our father, investing it in her name only. James has no idea about any of this, I realized. None, Rebecca confirmed. Diana keeps separate accounts he doesn't know about. She's been monitoring his emails and phone calls too. I've seen her checking his phone while he showers. Rebecca revealed Diana had a previous restraining order against her from a college boyfriend who had accused her of stalking after their breakup. Diana's parents had used their connections to have the records sealed. Why hasn't anyone in your family confronted this behavior? I asked. Money, Rebecca said simply. Diana's parents bankroll half the family in some way. Nobody wants to risk their lifestyle by speaking out. Except you, I noted. Rebecca smiled sadly. I have my own reasons for recognizing manipulation. My ex-husband was emotionally abusive for years. I know what it looks like when someone rewrites your reality. As evening approached, we formulated a plan. We wouldn't confront Diana directly, that would only make her defensive and potentially more dangerous to James. Instead, we'd gather more concrete evidence and find a way to speak with James alone, away from her influence. The wedding's in 3 days, I pointed out. What if we can't reach him before then? Then we try afterward, Rebecca said firmly. This isn't just about stopping a wedding anymore. It's about helping James see what's happening to him. As Rebecca prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. You should know helping you will cost me with my family. Diana will make sure of it. You don't have to do this, I offered. I can find another way. She shook her head. Some things matter more than family approval. The truth is one of them. After she left, I stared at the flash drive containing evidence of Diana's manipulations. For the first time since the wedding exclusion, I felt something beyond despair. I felt hope and determination. The sister who had stood by her brother through everything wasn't going to abandon him now, even if he thought that's what he wanted. Armed with Rebecca's evidence and renewed determination, I texted James the next morning. I need to speak with you alone. It's important, please. To my surprise, he replied within minutes. Diana has final dress fitting this afternoon. Could meet for coffee at 2. The speed of his response suggested he might not be as lost to me as Id feared. Perhaps somewhere beneath Diana's influence, my brother still existed. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe, halfway between our homes, neutral territory. I arrived early, setting up my laptop with Rebecca's flash drive, organizing the most compelling evidence first. Diana's previous marriage records, financial documents showing her control of James' inheritance, and text messages where Shed disparaged me to mutual friends. James arrived, looking exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. His normally impeccable appearance slightly disheveled, he offered a tentative smile that rekindled memories of our childhood bond. Thanks for meeting me, I said as he sat down. You said it was important. His tone was guarded but not hostile. It is. I took a deep breath. James, I'm worried about you and your relationship with Diana. His face immediately hardened. If you invited me here to criticize my fiancé, please just listen, I interrupted gently. I've discovered some concerning information that you should know before the wedding. To my surprise, he didn't immediately leave. What information? Diana hasn't been honest with you about several important things. I began, opening my laptop, including her past. I showed him the marriage certificate between Diana Carter and Todd Harrison, dated 7 years earlier. James stared at the document, confusion evident in his furrowed brow. This could be anyone, he said finally. Diana Carter isn't an uncommon name. It's her, I insisted, pulling up a photo Rebecca had provided from a society page, Diana with her first husband at a charity gala, looking younger but unmistakably her. James' face paled. Where did you get this? Rebecca gave it to me. She's concerned about Diana's pattern of behavior. His expression fluctuated between doubt and distress as I carefully presented more evidence. Financial documents showing transfers from Jameis accounts to investments solely in Diana's name. Screenshots of messages where Diana had orchestrated my exclusion from family events, while telling James I'd declined invitations. There's more, I said, pulling up the restraining order documentation from Diana's college ex-boyfriend. She has a history of stop. James interrupted, his voice strained. Just stop. I paused, watching emotions war across his face. For a moment, I saw recognition, a flicker of the critical thinking that had always defined my brother. James, I said gently, I know this is difficult to hear. But please consider why Diana would hide these things from you. Why would she lie about never being married? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his untouched coffee. I need to ask her about this. Of course, I agreed. But am concerned about how she'll react. She's gone to extraordinary lengths to hide her past. Diana wouldn't, he began, then stopped, uncertainty clouding his features. Rebecca is risking her relationship with her entire family to share this information, I added. She's worried about you, just like I am. Rebecca, he echoed. She's involved in this. As if summoned by her name, my phone lit up with a text from Rebecca. Diana left fitting early. Can't reach you. Call immediately. Before I could respond, the cafe door chimed. Diana swept in, designer sunglasses perched on her head despite the cloudy day. Her eyes locked on our table, her practiced smile not reaching her eyes. There you are, sweetie, she called, voice honeyed with false cheer. I finished early and thought I'd surprise you. James startled visibly, closing my laptop with a snap. Diana, what are you doing here? She slid into the booth beside him, placing a proprietary hand on his arm. Your location sharing was on, silly. I thought we could grab an early dinner. Her gaze flicked to me, sharp as a blade. I didn't realize you had company. The calculated arrival sent a chill through me. Had she been tracking his phone all along? Was this why he rarely met me alone? James and I were just catching up before the wedding, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Diana's smile tightened. How thoughtful. Especially since you declined your invitation. I began, but Diana was already turning to James, her expression morphing to hurt confusion. Honey, is that my medical information? She asked, gesturing to my laptop. Those look like my private records, James flushed. Allison was showing me some concerning documents about me. Diana's voice cracked perfectly, tears welling in her eyes on cue. You're digging into my past days before our wedding. Diana, if you could explain. Explain, she cried, tears now streaming down her face. On our wedding week? James, I trusted you. The theatrical display worked beautifully. Other cafe patrons turned to stare. The barista glared in my direction. James looked increasingly uncomfortable. Maybe we should discuss this privately, he suggested. How could you ambush me like this? Diana sobbed, ignoring him completely. After everything I've shared with you about my trust issues, and with her. She pointed at me accusingly. The one person who's tried to sabotage our relationship from day one. That's not true, I protested. Diana, you've been manipulating James. You've isolated him from everyone who cares about him. You see, Diana turned to James. This is exactly what I warned you about. Your sister can't stand seeing you happy with someone else. James' expression hardened as he looked at me. Allison, that's enough. James, please, I pleaded. Just look at the evidence. Ask yourself why she tracked your location, why she appeared the moment we started talking. Because I love him, Diana declared, wiping away tears that had miraculously stopped flowing. Because I wanted to surprise my fiancé. She turned to James, voice dropping to a wounded whisper. I can't believe you're letting her do this to us. 3 days before our wedding, James stood abruptly. We're leaving. This was a mistake. James, wait, stay away from us, Allison, he said, voice cold. You're dead to me. The words hit like a physical blow. As they left, Diana tucked securely against his side. She glanced back with a look of triumphant malice that only I could see. I sat alone, devastated by how perfectly Diana had manipulated the situation. My phone buzzed. Rebecca. Diana knows. Her text read. My parents just called. She's told the entire family I've betrayed them. I'm being disowned. The fallout continued that evening when my mother called, her voice tight with disappointment. What were you thinking, confronting them before their wedding? She demanded. Mom, Diana is controlling and manipulating James. I tried to explain. She's isolated him from everyone. He seems perfectly happy to me, she countered. The only drama is coming from you, Allison. Diana was in tears when they came by earlier. James is furious. Did he tell you what we discussed? About Diana's previous marriage she kept secret. People are entitled to privacy about their past, Mom said dismissively. Creating this unnecessary drama right before their wedding is selfish. I expected better from you. The conversation ended with my mother suggesting I take some time to reflect on my jealousy issues. The brother who once defended me against playground bullies now viewed me as an enemy. My mother had taken Diana's side. Rebecca had lost her family's support. It never felt so alone or defeated. That night, I cried until no tears remained, believing I'd lost my brother forever. Then my phone rang at nearly midnight, an unknown number. When I answered, a woman's hesitant voice came through. Is this Allison Mitchell? James' sister. Yes, I replied cautiously. Who's this? My name's Sarah. I live next door to your brother and Diana. She paused. I think you should know what's happening over there. I heard everything through the wall tonight. It's not good. Sarah's late-night call opened a new chapter in my understanding of Diana's manipulation. As James and Diana's neighbor, Shed witnessed concerning patterns of behavior for months, but hadn't known who to tell. They argue constantly when they think no one can hear. Sarah explained. Tonight was the worst screaming, things breaking. I heard Diana threaten to cancel the wedding if James ever spoke to you again. Did you call the police? I asked, alarmed. No, she admitted. The noise stopped eventually. But I found your number in the emergency contacts list James gave me when they first moved in. I thought you should know. Sarah's call provided a critical new perspective, someone with no personal stake who had observed Diana's behavior firsthand. She agreed to meet me the following day to share more observations. Bring anyone else who's concerned, she suggested. The more people compare notes, the clearer the pattern becomes. I immediately contacted Rebecca, who had been staying with a friend after her family's rejection. Together, we met Sarah at a small restaurant far from Diana and James' neighborhood. Sarah, a middle-aged professor with kind eyes and a precise manner, had compiled notes dating back months. Professional habit, she explained. I document everything unusual, especially when it feels wrong. Her observations painted a disturbing picture. Diana screaming at James behind closed doors, James making hushed phone calls from the backyard that ended abruptly when Diana appeared. Diana systematically opening James' mail and packages before he arrived home. 2 months ago, a man came looking for Diana, Sarah added. He seemed nervous, said he needed to warn James about something. Diana arrived home while he was at the door, and the way she reacted, I've never seen someone look so terrified. He left immediately and never returned. With Sarah's description and the timing, Rebecca realized who the visitor must have been. Todd Harrison, Diana's ex-husband. I have a contact who might be able to reach him. 24 hours later, we sat across from Todd Harrison in a quiet hotel lobby. Initially reluctant to speak, Todd gradually opened up about his brief marriage to Diana. It started wonderfully, he recalled, staring into his coffee. Diana was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. The problems began after the wedding. Todd described a methodical isolation that sounded eerily familiar. Friends who mysteriously stopped calling. Family members who suddenly had issues with him. Diana's constant monitoring of his communications. She'd check my phone while I slept, he explained. If a female name appeared in my call history, even work colleagues, there'd be accusations, tears, days of emotional punishment. Financial control came next. Diana convinced Todd to merge their accounts as a symbol of trust. Soon she was making all financial decisions, limiting his access to their joint resources. When I finally tried to leave, she threatened suicide, he said. When that didn't work, she threatened to tell everyone I had abused her. She had constructed an elaborate fiction, complete with evidence-doctored photos, emails I supposedly sent. How did you get out? I asked. My sister refused to give up on me, he replied, meeting my eyes with understanding. She kept reaching out despite Diana's interference. She documented the manipulation until I couldn't deny it anymore. Sound familiar? It did. My efforts to reach James mirrored his sister's persistence. The parallels were uncanny and encouraging. If Todd had eventually seen through Diana's manipulation, perhaps James could too. Todd agreed to put his painful experience in writing for James to read. "I should have warned other people years ago," he said. "Maybe I could have prevented this." Our investigation gained momentum. Rebecca reached out to Diana's former roommate, who described similar patterns of isolation and manipulation. A previous boss detailed Diana's vindictive response to perceived slights, including fabricated harassment claims against colleagues who challenged her. The most alarming discovery came from financial records Rebecca obtained through family connections. Diana had systematically transferred the majority of Jameis' inheritance money from our father's life insurance into accounts only she could access. "She's been funneling money into an escape fund," the financial advisor explained after reviewing the transactions. "It's a classic pattern in financially abusive relationships. Build a safety net that only benefits one person." Meanwhile, Jameis' sudden job transfer to another state, something Head mentioned casually at our last family dinner, took on new significance. Diana suggested the transfer. His colleague confided when I reached out. James wasn't even interested initially. She worked directly with management to make it happen. The transfer would move James thousands of miles from his remaining support network, increasing his isolation and dependency. The picture becoming clearer, I arranged to meet with Diana's mother, hoping to understand whether she recognized her daughter's behavior patterns. Mrs. Carter initially refused my call but agreed to a brief meeting after I mentioned potential legal implications of financial mismanagement. We met at her country club, where her polished exterior cracked slightly when I presented evidence of Diana's manipulation. "What do you want?" she asked tersely. "The truth," I replied. "Does Diana have a history of controlling behavior?" Mrs. Carter's carefully composed face betrayed nothing, but her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her napkin. "My daughter is passionate about her relationships. Did you know about her previous marriage, the restraining order, the financial manipulation?" Her silence was answer enough. "She needs help, Mrs. Carter, not enablement," I pressed. "James isn't the first person she's isolated and controlled. He won't be the last if this pattern continues. Wave provided the best treatments money can buy," she finally admitted, voice barely audible. "Nothing has worked. Diana doesn't believe she needs help, but you know she does," I said gently. Mrs. Carter's eyes met mine, momentarily unguarded. "What can I do? She's my daughter. Help me help James see the truth," I urged, "before he loses everything, including himself." She left without agreeing to help, but the crack in her facade suggested Diana's behavior wasn't news to her parents, merely an uncomfortable reality they'd chosen to ignore. As the wedding approached, now less than 24 hours away, I consulted a domestic abuse counselor about how to proceed. "What you're describing is coercive control," the counselor explained. "It's particularly difficult because the victim often doesn't recognize what's happening. The isolation happens so gradually. How do I help him see it?" I asked desperately. "Direct confrontation rarely works," she advised. "It typically pushes the victim closer to the abuser, who portrays the intervention as an attack. Instead, maintain contact however possible. Be a consistent, non-judgmental presence. When he's ready to see the pattern, Hell needs someone safe to turn to." "But the wedding is tomorrow," I said. "Once they're married, her control will only increase." The counselor's expression was compassionate but realistic. "Focus on helping him recognize the signs of manipulation rather than stopping the wedding. The more you push against the relationship directly, the more he'll defend it. Instead, help him understand what healthy relationships look like." Her advice contradicted my impulse to save James immediately, but resonated with what Todd had shared. His sister's patient persistence had eventually helped him see the truth, not forceful intervention. With time running out, I shifted strategies. Instead of trying to prevent the wedding, I would focus on planting seeds of awareness that could grow over time. I would become the steady, reliable presence James might eventually turn to when he began to recognize his situation. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly those seeds would take root, or the catalyst that would finally open my brother's eyes. The domestic abuse counselor's advice transformed my approach. Instead of confronting Diana's behavior directly, I needed to help James recognize the patterns himself. I spent the evening before the wedding studying materials about coercive control, identifying the tactics Diana employed, and subtle ways to counter them. Rebecca and I created a comprehensive file documenting Diana's behavior patterns: financial control, isolation, gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and identity erosion. We included testimonials from Todd and others who had experienced Diana's manipulation firsthand, financial records showing her misappropriation of Jameis' inheritance, and a timeline of his increasing isolation. This isn't just for an immediate intervention, I explained to Rebecca. It's a resource we'll have ready when James begins to see the truth himself. Understanding that direct approaches had backfired, I reached out to Chris, Jameis' best friend from college whom Diana had systematically excluded. Once inseparable, they hadn't spoken in over a year. I've tried contacting him dozens of times, Chris said when we met for coffee. He stopped responding after Diana told him I'd made inappropriate comments about their relationship. Did you? I asked. I expressed concern when James stopped showing up to our monthly poker nights, Chris admitted, asked if everything was okay. Apparently, that qualified as undermining their relationship. Chris still cared deeply about James and agreed to be part of our support network. We strategized ways to re-establish contact without triggering Diana's defensive mechanisms, casual text messages about shared interests, no pressure for immediate responses, no criticism of Diana. Plant seeds, not ultimatums, became our mantra. The wedding day arrived. I stayed home, respecting the exclusion while remaining available if James reached out. Rebecca attended as family, promising to observe discreetly and support James however possible. 3 days passed with no contact. I resisted the urge to call or text, remembering the counselor's advice about patience. On the 4th day, my phone rang. Jameis' number. Allie. His voice sounded hesitant, almost surprised to hear me answer. James, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. How are you? Diana and I had a disagreement, he said carefully, about the honeymoon plans. I just needed someone to talk to. The opening was small but significant. I listened without judgment as he described a minor argument about their travel itinerary. Diana had changed their destination without consulting him. That sounds frustrating, I said simply, resisting the urge to point out the pattern. It is, he agreed. I know it's a small thing, but I'd been looking forward to hiking in Colorado. Now we're doing a resort in the Bahamas because Diana says it's better for networking with potential clients. How do you feel about that? I asked. The question seemed to catch him off guard. I don't know. I should be fine with it, right? It's just a vacation. Your feelings matter too, James. In any relationship. His silence spoke volumes. When had he last considered his own feelings legitimate? Anyway, he said finally, I should go. Diana will be back soon. I'm here anytime you want to talk, I offered. About anything. 2 weeks later, he called again after another minor disagreement. Then again the following week. Small conversations, seemingly inconsequential, but each one represented a tiny crack in Diana's isolation strategy. I was careful never to criticize Diana directly. Instead, I asked questions that prompted James to examine situations more critically. How did that make you feel? Is that what you wanted too? Have you shared your perspective with her? Meanwhile, our support network expanded. Chris successfully re-established casual text communication with James. Rebecca maintained contact through wedding thank you notes and family connections. Even Sarah, the neighbor, found opportunities for friendly interactions when Diana wasn't present. Each connection represented a thread in a safety net being carefully woven around my brother, people who cared about him, and recognized Diana's manipulation. The breakthrough came 2 months after the wedding. Mom was celebrating her 60th birthday, and I had organized a small family dinner. Diana initially accepted the invitation, then abruptly changed their response the day before. James can't make it, she texted Mom. We have an important client dinner. Mom was devastated. I called James directly, something I rarely did. Mom's really disappointed you can't make her birthday dinner, I said when he answered. She was looking forward to seeing you. Birthday dinner. James sounded genuinely confused. What are you talking about? Tomorrow night. Mom's 60th. You and Diana RSVP'd yes last week, but Diana just told Mom you have a client dinner instead. Silence followed. I didn't know about Mom's dinner, he finally said. And we don't have any client meeting tomorrow. The moment felt pivotal, a direct contradiction he couldn't rationalize away. James, is Diana making decisions without telling you? I need to go, he said abruptly. Later that evening, my phone rang again. Diana and I had a fight, James said, his voice shaking. I confronted her about the birthday dinner, and she completely lost it. Started screaming that I was accusing her of lying. That I always take your side over hers. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. That must have been difficult. She threw a vase at the wall, he continued. Then she looked at me with this expression I've never seen before. Cold, calculating. It scared me, Allie. I remained silent, letting him process. She's been checking my phone, he added quietly. I found a tracking app I never installed. She knows every call I make, every text I send. That's why I'm using the neighbor's phone right now. James, I think you might have been right, he whispered. About some things, anyway. I need to figure this out. Can we meet somewhere? Not right away, but soon? I need to be careful about how I do this. Hope bloomed in my chest. Anytime, anywhere. I'm here for you. I might need somewhere to stay, he admitted. Just temporarily, to clear my head. My door is always open to you. Always has been. After we hung up, I texted our support network. The seed has sprouted. Over the next 2 weeks, James observed Deanna's behavior with newly critical eyes. He noted how she controlled their finances, isolated him from friends, monitored his communications, and made unilateral decisions. He began secretly documenting concerning incidents, creating his own evidence file. One afternoon, Diana discovered him on the phone with me. Her reaction confirmed everything Wed feared. She completely lost control, James told me afterward, screaming that I was betraying her, that everyone was against her. She threatened to destroy me if I left her, said no one would believe anything I said about her. The mask had slipped completely. James finally saw the truth had been avoiding for years. I need to get out, he said simply. Will you help me? With the domestic abuse counselor's guidance, we created a safety plan for James to leave. Financial accounts were secured, important documents retrieved, a temporary living arrangement established. Chris offered his guest room as a safe place Diana wouldn't think to look. The pieces were in place. After 3 years of systematic isolation and manipulation, my brother was ready to reclaim his life. The path to healing would be long and complex, but the crucial first step was imminent. What none of us anticipated was the intensity of Diana's reaction when she realized her control was slipping, or how dangerous a cornered manipulator could become. The morning James planned to leave Diana dawned bright and clear, an ironic contrast to the emotional storm we were navigating. He had packed a small bag over several days, hiding it in his car trunk. Essential documents were secured in a safety deposit box Diana couldn't access. The final step was simply walking away. I waited at a coffee shop 6 blocks from their house, as Wed planned. James would drive there directly after Diana left for her morning yoga class, a routine she never varied. Chris and Rebecca waited at Chris' apartment, where James would stay temporarily. At 8:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from James. On my way. The relief was overwhelming. After months of careful planning and years of watching my brother disappear into Diana's manipulation, this moment felt like the first real hope of getting him back. James arrived looking both terrified and determined. When he sat across from me, his hands trembled slightly. I left a letter explaining I need space to think, he said. I didn't mention where I'm going. I've turned off my phone's location services and left my regular phone behind. I'm using the prepaid one you got me. These precautions might seem extreme for leaving a spouse, but Diana had proven herself unpredictable and potentially dangerous. The domestic abuse counselor had emphasized safety above all else. You're doing the right thing, I assured him. Taking space to think clearly isn't wrong. Part of me still feels like I'm overreacting, he admitted. Like maybe I'm the crazy one for seeing problems everywhere. That's the gaslighting talking, I said gently. Trust your instincts. James nodded, though uncertainty still clouded his expression. What happens now? Now you take time to process, to think clearly away from Diana's influence. No pressure, no timelines, just space to rediscover yourself. The first 3 days passed quietly. James settled into Chris' guest room, sleeping more than he had in months. Deanna called his regular phone repeatedly, leaving increasingly frantic messages that Chris monitored to assess her mental state. She cycled through predictable phases: confusion, hurt, anger, threats, then desperate pleas for reconciliation. On the 4th day, the manipulation escalated. Diana showed up at our mother's house in tears, claiming James had been acting erratically for weeks, potentially having a nervous breakdown. She suggested he might harm himself, implying I had somehow encouraged his instability. Mom called me immediately, panicked about James' safety. "He's safe, Mom," I assured her. Has just taking space to think about their relationship. Diana says he's been behaving strangely for weeks. Mom countered, paranoid, accusing her of things. She's worried sick. The narrative flip was textbook manipulation, painting James as unstable, herself as the concerned wife. Diana had even contacted James' workplace, suggesting he was having mental health issues requiring extended leave. She's trying to undermine his credibility before he can speak out. The counselor explained when I called for advice. It's very common with abusers who sense they're losing control. The smear campaign continued. Diana told mutual friends James had been emotionally abusive. She claimed to family members that he had gambling debts she'd been covering up. Each lie was carefully crafted to isolate James from potential support, while portraying Diana as the victim. Through it all, James remained in his safe location, working through years of manipulation with a therapist specialized in coercive control. As distance from Diana increased, his clarity sharpened. I can't believe what I allowed to happen, he confessed during one of our talks. Looking back, the red flags were everywhere. Manipulation happens gradually, I reminded him. No one wakes up suddenly isolated from everyone they love. I chose her over you, he said, voice breaking. My own sister, after everything we've been through together. I'll regret that forever. You were under her influence, I said. I never blamed you. But I blamed you, he countered. For problems she created. I said terrible things. We can heal from this, James. It won't happen overnight, but we will. Forgiveness wasn't immediate or simple. The wounds were deep on both sides. But with each honest conversation, each acknowledgement of hurt, and expression of remorse, healing began. 2 weeks after leaving, James filed for legal separation. Diana's response was nuclear legal threats, public accusations, showing up at Chris' apartment screaming until neighbors called police. She created multiple social media accounts to spread fabricated stories about James' supposed mental decline and abusive behavior. The legal process proved Diana had been systematically draining James' accounts, including most of his inheritance from Dad. Financial recovery would take years, but James insisted that was a small price for freedom. Money can be replaced, he said. My relationship with you and Mom can't be. 6 months after leaving Diana, James moved into his own apartment. The divorce proceedings were contentious but progressing. Diana continued occasional harassment attempts, but found them increasingly ineffective as James rebuilt his support network and set firm boundaries. Our sibling relationship strengthened through intentional effort. Weekly dinners became sacred time for rebuilding trust and communication. We talked openly about painful memories, acknowledging hurts while choosing forgiveness. James attended therapy consistently, understanding how childhood patterns had made him vulnerable to Diana's manipulation. Dad's death left a void I was desperate to fill, he explained. Diana seemed to offer security and certainty during a time I felt neither. 1 year after James left Diana, we hosted a family reunion at my home. The contrast to the previous year couldn't have been more striking. James laughed freely, engaged genuinely with relatives, no longer checking for anyone's approval before speaking. Later that evening, as we cleaned up together, James paused. You saved me, Allie, he said quietly. You never gave up, even when I pushed you away. You saved yourself, I corrected. You found the courage to see the truth and act on it. That's all you. James began dating again eventually, approaching relationships with hard-earned wisdom. His new girlfriend, Lauren, was James' opposite in the best ways, direct but kind, independent but supportive. Most importantly, she encouraged his relationships with family and friends, rather than competing with them. The journey taught me profound lessons about persistence, forgiveness, and the complexity of human vulnerability. I learned that sometimes, loving someone means standing firm when they're lost, being the constant they can return to when they're ready. Diana still attempts contact occasionally, but those efforts find James stronger each time. Has transformed his experience into advocacy, volunteering with a men's support group for domestic abuse survivors, helping others recognize manipulation tactics he once missed. Our story doesn't have a perfect Hollywood ending. Recovery from psychological manipulation isn't a straight line. James still has moments of self-doubt and vulnerability, but the direction is steadily upward, each day bringing more clarity and healing than the last. The brother who was once forbidden from speaking to me now calls daily. The bond that Diana tried to sever has regrown stronger at the broken places. We lost 3 years to manipulation and control, but we've gained a relationship tempered by fire, tested, broken, and reforged into something unbreakable. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending the pain never happened. It means choosing peace over resentment, growth over stagnation. James and I both bear scars from this journey, but we've learned to wear them as badges of resilience rather than marks of defeat. If you're watching someone you love disappear into a controlling relationship, remember this: patience outlasts manipulation. Truth eventually surfaces. And sometimes the greatest act of love is simply remaining steadfastly present, ready to help when they're ready to see. What's your experience with recognizing manipulation in relationships, either your own or someone you love? Has anyone ever tried to come between you and a family member? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in this struggle. Thank you for witnessing our journey, and remember, sometimes the strongest love is the kind that waits patiently for someone to find their way back home.